Hey, my name is Rob Pluvius Browning. I'm going to be doing a video series on Takeshi no挑戦状, also known as Takeshi's Challenge, a video game made by Taito in 1986. This is an introductory video. I'm going to be talking a little bit about why I'm doing this video series, and if you don't want to hear about all of that, if you just want to get straight to the meat of this, you can go ahead and skip to the second part. The reason why I'm making a video series about this game is it's not that it's a good game. It's definitely not good. In fact, it's quite bad. The reason why is because I find this game utterly fascinating. One of the most fascinating games I've played in a long time. And the reason why it's fascinating starts out with the fact that it was designed by a very popular Japanese comedian named Beat Takeshi Kitano. Westerners might know him as the host of Takeshi's Castle, which was known as MXC in the West. And if you've ever seen an episode of that show, you might have an idea of the kind of personality that this guy has. Unlike most games, especially for the time period, Takeshi actually had he pretty much designed the whole game himself. And it was over an hour-long meeting, supposedly, which should give you an idea of what this game is going to be like. And despite being a bad game, it actually sold 800,000 units, which was a huge amount at the time, and that was because of Takeshi's involvement. And that's one of the things that makes this game fascinating, and this fact leads to another fascinating thing about this game, which is that despite being really obscure over here in the West, there's a lot of myths surrounding this game. You know, you wouldn't expect a game like this to have myths in the American gaming community. But the first myth I'd like to mention is that there's a boss in this game that requires 20,000 hits to kill. That's not true. There is no boss like that. In fact, there are no bosses in this entire game. But what is true is that if you punch 20,000 times on the tile screen like I'm doing right now, you actually will get warped straight to the last part of the final dungeon. And getting to the final part of the dungeon that way is just about as enjoyable as actually playing through the game to get to the dungeon. But I'm not going to actually make you watch me punch the air 20,000 times. That would be cruel. Another myth about this game is that the title screen supposedly says that this game was created by a man who hates video games. As you can see, the title screen's pretty sparse. It doesn't say much of anything. In reality, supposedly, that text is written in the manual, and I've never seen a manual for this game translated or untranslated. I'd love to get my hands on one. I'd love to see what a manual for a game like this is like. And really, that leads to the core of this game. It's a parody of how games were in the mid-'80s when this game was made. Games back then would make you do obscure things with very few hints whatsoever. How are you supposed to know to do these things? I don't know. A good example that the Angry Video Game Nerd brought up was with Castlevania 2. Which made you kneel in front of a cliff for several seconds for a tornado to come by and pick you up and take you to another part of the game. And I think there was one hint in the entire game that would lead you to this, but it was something about praying, which, yeah, I guess you have to kneel to pray, but that's a very, very vague hint. Takeshi's Challenge is basically that taken to its logical extreme. Most games back then required a guide to get through. This game actually had two strategy guides. The first one was incomplete, which I don't know of any other game where the strategy guide was so incomplete that they had to make a second one just for people to be able to get through it, because it was literally impossible to beat the game using the first guide and nothing else. So they got massive amounts of complaints. I believe the peak was around 400 calls a day to the publisher, and they printed a second guide a few weeks later. And even then, people couldn't beat this game. Takeshi's Challenge is the grandfather, the pioneer of modern day video game parodies like I Want to Be the Guy and Showbon Action, games like that. But there's two big differences. The first one is that this game was made by a guy who hates video games. Presumably the other games were made by people who love video games. And the other big difference is this game's not really hard. Once you know what you have to do, it's actually a fairly simple game. But actually figuring out what you have to do is the hard part. So that's why I'm interested in making videos about this game. And there's only one other Let's Play of the English translation of this game that I know of, and it's Deceased Crabs. And he's very well known in the YouTube community. He did a good job with his Let's Play. But it was a basic walkthrough. It went through the game very quickly. The minimum number of steps you had to take to get through the game. And I don't blame them for not playing the rest of the game. You definitely shouldn't make anybody do that if they don't want to do it. I figured there was a gap that needed to be filled there. So that's why I haven't really called this a Let's Play. I'm calling it a Let's Die in Takeshi's Challenge, because I'm going to show all the different ways you can screw up in this game. So I hope you enjoy that. And by the way, I might as well address this because I know people were thinking about it. Yes, this is the accent I speak with in real life. I'm from the coal fields of West Virginia, so, you know, there you go. I'll see you in the next part.